was entirely too close. Let's talk about it. Roll the intro.
Somebody walks up to the outside, expect that to happen to you.
Now 1st and 20, and Goff throws another one away.
So the Lions just played the Bears in week 11. I want to say week 12 is next week. That is a Thanksgiving Day game against the Packers. This game against the Bears was a game that they should have lost in every aspect. The offense was sluggish for most of the game, except for the final 4 minutes. The defense really didn't play particularly well. They weren't awful in this game. They were just on the field too long was the main problem. They were doing okay at the beginning of the game, but as it went on and they were just on the field longer and longer, there was a lot of big drives from the Bears that they just kept, like they weren't able to get them off the field on third downs. There were a couple of bad penalties in this game that all went against the Lions. So even when the Lions are good, the NFL still doesn't want them to win. With that stupid pass interference at the end of the first drive, there were a couple of plays that could go either way, and the refs sided with the Bears on most of them. Really, the biggest problem was just the offense was just not there today, and a big problem was Jared Goff. We got down early because of the interception. And, they scored the Bears on their first drive, and then Goff threw a pick. And through the rest of that game, because that happened, we were playing catch-up. And when you're playing catch-up, you have to rely more on the passing game. And this is something that Goff, when you give him 30, nearly 40 passing attempts, this is the type of games that you get with him sometimes. The running game was still effective in this game, but we just didn't have a lot of time to actually hand the ball off to the running backs. David Montgomery only had 13 rushes on the game, I want to say. Jahmyr Gibbs had like 8. There wasn't the bulk carries there that I would prefer in this style of offense, so we relied on Jared Goff a lot. He threw 3 interceptions in this game, and truthfully, it should have been 5, because there was one on one of the early scoring drives that almost got picked and almost got ran back for a touchdown. The defensive back just dropped the ball. But if he would have caught that, the game would have been the Bears, especially when that happened. And then there was another play late in the third quarter, maybe beginning of the fourth, where it was just a bad pass that kind of slipped out of Goff's hands that also could have been picked and arguably should have been, but it just wasn't. So there were opportunities there for the Bears to take, and they just luckily didn't take them. And that's something, the Bears, they're not that good of a team this year, and that's the type of things that when you are a type of team that struggles like they do, you don't take advantage of those opportunities, which is the Lions have done a lot historically. This year they've been pretty good, and this is the difference between what they usually are and this season. In years past, they would have lost this game because they just weren't talented enough to overcome all of the bull crap that happened in the game. The Lions this season, they still won, even though they got outplayed in pretty much every aspect. Sam Laporta, another huge part of the offense, only had 3 catches, and he didn't really have one until late in the fourth quarter, which was when the offense started going again. You got to get him involved earlier in the game. And defensively, they didn't do a great job of keeping in Justin Fields in the pocket, which we talked about before. They're not very good at defending against mobile quarterbacks. We saw that in the Baltimore game against Lamar Jackson. If we ever face the Philadelphia Eagles at some point, I'm worried about Jalen Hurts, and their offensive line might just dominate the Lions. But that's we'll worry about that when we get there. I don't believe they play in the regular season, so that would be a playoff matchup if that happens to happen. Really, I think the big problem is the Bears on that opening drive, they marched right down the field and scored a touchdown. And I kept looking at, they pretty much called the same 3 or 4 plays that entire drive. It felt like a drive of Madden. They were using a lot of options, swing Justin Fields to the left and then have him come back around to the right. And then sometimes there was a pass to the flat, off to the right. Sometimes it was like a crossing route that was right across the middle of the field. Sometimes Fields would just run it. And it really just depended on whatever the linebackers were doing. But they never quite figured it out. And honestly, they should have just done that the entire game. And they probably would have won, because there was just a couple of situations where Jack Campbell, I noticed at one point, overran Justin Fields, and he got up the field for a few yards that he shouldn't have gotten. So it was just piecing apart the Lions with whatever they were doing, it was not working. And they didn't get any sacks in this game either. There was only one sack late in the game. It was a huge time to have a sack, and of course it was Aiden Hutchinson who got to Justin Field, strip sack, the ball went out the back of the end zone for that final score, that safety, which really secured the Lions' victory. But before then, they were not able to get to Fields because he's so elusive, and honestly just because other than Hutchinson, with who we have right now, there's not a great other pass rusher. Injuries and whatnot, and people just not getting to the quarterback as much as you would like. Aiden Hutchinson has gone a couple games without a sack. This was his first one in a while. And it kind of feels like if Hutchinson doesn't get to the quarterback, nobody will on the defense. And that's a problem. Because when you have an offense as explosive as they are, that's great. But if they don't click, then you're going to lose. I mean, we saw that with St. Louis back when they had the greatest show on turf. They only got one Super Bowl out of that core, which was arguably one of, if not the most talented offenses ever put on a football field. And that's because if you run into a game where the defense is just really, really good, or they get in a situation where they're behind early, sometimes you push too much, and then you get sloppy quarterback play, or fumbles, or just not clicking with certain offensive weapons. So that's when I'm afraid the Lions, you're going to have to put something on the defensive side of the ball in order to be like, we're going to improve the team. Because if you just rely on that offense, you might get lucky, but you might get bounced by a team like the 49ers, who have an amazing defense, or the Philadelphia Eagles, which has the most dominant offensive line in the game, and a pretty good defense of their own right, not quite as good as San Francisco's. But both of those two teams are the powerhouses in the NFC, and if you're going to compete for a Super Bowl or what have you with those teams, you need to play by their rules. And right now, I don't know if the Lions are built to do that. Next week is the Thanksgiving Day game. It is the 12 o'clock, the early window game. They played the Packers. They just won in a quite close game with the Chargers, who we just beat. I think the Packers, they're not that great of a team, the Packers, but also the Lions haven't been dominating like they have been earlier in the year. They've gone a couple of weeks now where if they win, it's just barely with the Chargers and just barely in this game, and then they got blown out by the Ravens. They haven't really been playing their best ball of recent, so I'm a little worried they might lose this game, but if they do, there's still a little bit of wiggle room in the division, but hopefully they can come out with a win, and we can sweep the Packers again, because that would be nice. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a like and a comment down below. It helps me out in the algorithm, and I'll see you all in the next episode, where I complain about the Thanksgiving Day game, probably. Goodbye.